So good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to the Combat Zone Wrestling anniversary show today, and I'm really excited for this because, I've always wanted to go to one of their events. Unfortunately, last year I had a ticket to the Tournament of Death, but I was not able to go because my personal time off request was not approved. So be it when you work at a hospital. Yeah, and also too, I went to their show Backlight last night, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And they had a death match at the end of it, but I didn't stay to watch it because I was like, today I'm going to be, seeing so many death matches that I just want to be a little bit more surprised. And I've also had a very interesting couple of days in Trenton, New Jersey. Friday night I went to the New Japan Pro Wrestling USA show. And then last night they had Backlight. And then also yesterday I went to the Charcoal Pit, which is a restaurant in Wilmington, Delaware. It's in George Montes Hamburger Americas, frequented by Joe Biden and Barack Obama. So it's been an interesting couple of days. And it's also kind of funny, this morning I went out to IHOP because usually they have this buffet thing tonight at the Combat Zone Wrestling thing. And I don't want to just eat too much really because, I want to have good manners and share with everybody. And then also too, I really like Combat Zone Wrestling because, they're unapologetic, they're off the wall, and definitely I just want to give it a chance. I've never been to one of their shows, why not, get what you can out of life. That's one of my philosophies. Yeah, that was a really fucking awesome match. She's like the woman of my dreams. I really love that bad. Don't give a fuck. Kick your ass like a woman. Woo! So guys, I came back from the CZW anniversary show, and I do want to talk about it. The first thing is that I got a VIP, so I paid around $150. And what happened was you went to the buffet. They had pieces of salmon. They also had macaroni and cheese, potatoes, and chicken nuggets and a few other items. It wasn't cheap in a way. It was really average. And then also there was a bunch of free drinks. I got myself a Shirley Temple because I think I've told you guys that story too, that, what happened was that I went to an AEW show. I had one drink at the event and I ended up getting shoved by Wheeler Yuta and security because I was a little off, So I just kind of learned, obviously, Combat Zone Wrestling. You don't want to fuck with those people. The other thing is that they gave me a bag with a free T-shirt and then a VIP badge. And unfortunately for me, I lost my my bag because I'm not used to carrying bags with me. So I lost that. But I got myself, a VIP badge. And I'm trying to take it out of my pocket, so I can definitely keep that. And then the other thing that I will say is that the matches were pretty good. So I want to review the matches now. So the first match was the Home Improvement match between Nico Gray and Jake Gray. So Nico Gray wins this. It was a really good match. It was and I have my handy dandy notebook in case I just look over here for a minute. But Nico Gray versus Jake Gray. So it was high tempo, moved really quickly. They used door boards. They used sparks. They had to put sandpaper in Jake Gray's mouth, and they also did something with kendo stick spots. So, I really enjoyed it. It was really violent. It was really epic. I think after this match, I said to myself that wholeheartedly, I felt like I got my money's worth. The next was the Ides of March death match. Between Angela Metro and Mickey Knuckles. So one thing that killed the match for me was that I felt like they spent way too much time outside the ring. But I understand that sometimes you got to do that for two reasons. You got to do that for pacing. You got to slow things down a little bit. And then also, too, if the first match, they weren't wrestling in the crowd, it's okay to do it in some matches because you want to, make sure it doesn't feel a little monotonous. So they use roughly the same weapons, except there was this barbed wire board that I believe I think it was Angel Metro got thrown into. And then also Mickey Knuckles won by using a pump handle suplex, sending Angela Metro into a chair with like fluorescent tubes on it. So it was overall a really good match. I also liked the ending of it because it looked like they were, on the same page. They were cool with each other. Then you kind of saw one of these wrestlers in the main event. So it was decent. I just felt I felt like the beginning part was kind of like a little slow. But I understand too. They also have to pace themselves because sometimes, as I said, if it's just like get to the violent stuff, you gotta kind of like build up to that. So they had like this intermission from the matches by having the Hall of Fame ceremony, and they inducted Danny Havoc into it.
You're the fucking man, dude. People don't talk about you enough and what you've done and what you can't do. And I'm super stoked that you've been here. You're such a big part of Grant's life. Like, thank you. Like, you fucking rule.
It was definitely very sentimental, and there was this person who inducted him, and he was talking about like how how like Danny Havoc advocated for him to wrestle in death matches. So Danny Havoc did a lot for people, and again like I don't follow Combat Zone Wrestling, so a lot of these wrestlers I don't know, but obviously somebody who's committed to a company, especially Combat Zone Wrestling, it's definitely a lot of blood, sweat, and no tears. It does say something when they actually commit. And then they also had something where the CZW champion comes out. I don't remember his name, but he looks like a super fat version of Ricochet. It was just kind of fun to do that. The next thing that happened was they had the light tubes match between Jameson Shook and Eric Dillinger. There was a spot where like somebody jumped off the ring rope, the ladder went into somebody's face. They used light tubes, and I was kind of saying to myself, I was a little confused because usually ladder matches, people usually do it for a title or something like that. So it doesn't kind of make sense that people are using the ladder to have the ending be like a pinfall type of thing, really. But overall, it was a really good match. The other thing that happened was that we had like a special match, and I want to say this, that I'm not a fan of special matches because sometimes what happens is it lengthens the show. And we see this in AEW where their shows are way too long. But here it was Nick Gage. He fought somebody. It was kind of like a jobber match. So Nick Gage completely destroyed this guy. He used a bunch of light tubes. He used a pizza cutter. It was kind of like really violent. And when Nick Gage came, it was kind of like, a booster shot to the crowd, really. It would be the exact same thing if you had like AEW All In and it was a couple hours into the show and then John Cena had a match in AEW or something like that, really. Like sometimes surprise matches can work. Surprise matches can add life into the show, and they absolutely did that with Nick Gage. And then also too with Nick Gage, they actually put him in the main event, so it wasn't like a 6-way, it was a 7-way. And he actually didn't win, and that was actually cool that he didn't win the main event because obviously you have to give it to new people. You can't be like, oh, well, we're going to give it to the veteran, because if you do that too much, then it's almost like, why build your next generation if you're not going to do that? I'm happy that he was on AEW because it definitely, I think for a lot of people who didn't know him, this helped with his that like being on AEW helped with his popularity. The next match was Ricky Ricky Shane Page versus Jake Dredd. I had a hard time with this match because they look alike, really. But it was the barbed wire mountain match, and the way you win this match was that you have to throw somebody through a door panel. Like there's this door panel with glass on it, with like a bed of barbed wire on it. So I would think that you need something a little bit more. That would, if you would call it barbed wire mountain match, I think you would need something a little bit more epic than that. Really, I think that's cool, but it's a little bit more but some more epic. They used a lot of like they used like a lot of weapons on this. You know, it was a big body match. I think in the beginning I didn't like them. They had it was also just like the Ides of March match where I felt like they moved a little too slowly in the beginning. They were pacing themselves. I felt like this should have been like more like hard hitting. Like, you know, when Samoa Joe wrestles, Samoa Joe is a bigger guy, but he knows how to start with intensity. Like here, I think they were a little too maybe gingerly in the intensity. I think like they worked up to it, but it kind of felt like, oh, it felt like, you know, come on, you guys are big bad dudes, really. So can you please just get to the actual carnage? And then the main event match was the Ultraviolent Elimination Scramble for the Ultraviolent Championship. This is not the heavyweight championship. It's Eric Ryan, Lucky 13, Alex Colon, Jimmy Lloyd, Shellac, Hoodfoot, and Nick Gage. So this was a really, really great match. Like they used fluorescent tables, those fluorescent tubes. They used glass. They went through tables. They went to the audience. They did a lot of really epic stuff, and it started with a really high tempo because they honestly wanted to get the crowd excited. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was definitely a really great great thing. And then Shellac wins. And again, I was saying too that it took a lot of bravery to do that because, you know, sometimes people may be like, oh, well, they may want to put the championship on Nick Gage because it's easier to give it to a veteran or somebody that's recognized. But then again, how do you build the next generation if you are always like, you know, putting titles on other people and things like that, really? So I felt that was, you know, an appropriate choice just to say, hey, let's give it to somebody else, really. So overall, it was a really great show. There's a couple of things I'm going to answer for you guys. So I think one of the big questions with Combat Zone Wrestling is that did I feel safe during the show? And I would say no, because one of the big problems was that I was in the ringside area, but I actually sat in the back because, you know, I wanted to do like behind the scene vlogs. I think that if you're in the front row, there is a high risk that you may get hit by glass or other things. So I do think that it's a little reckless. And I think like one thing that I did not like was when they had the barbed wire mountain match and they set it up the board that had glass on it and the barbed wire. They were telling people to get out of the way. They told everybody to move back. And that's technically not really a good thing in a way because, you know, it says something when you're telling a bunch of rows of people to move back for something. That's not really safe. And then also, too, it did have like a dusty smell because obviously they're breaking light tubes. I knew that light tubes used to have light tubes, they may or may not still have mercury in it, but you have to kind of like be kind of mindful of doing these matches and making sure that, okay, you know, people should be able to sit wherever and not have to worry about moving or getting out of the way. I know some people were sitting out in chairs and some of the chairs kind of imploded because some of the chairs that they had at the place were kind of really, really shitty. But it wasn't enough for me to say that it was a bad night. I think like for safety, I would kind of give it like a 2 out of 5, really, you know, like for safety. The other thing I would say is that did I feel it was repetitive? I think the honest answer is yes, but I was entertained throughout the entire thing, really. So I would say 3 out of 5 for it being repetitive. But I would say that, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, if I was to do something like go to every single show and they were to do this shit in every single show, I would probably not be watching it as much, really, because, again, it gets kind of repetitive. I also think that, again, last night I made an excellent choice. I went to Backlight. They had like a death match at the end of it. I chose not to stay for the death match because I was like, okay, I know I'm going to see this tomorrow or a bunch of deathmatch stuff, really. So I do think that not watching this, I do think that watching CCW or only going to the special events is actually very helpful. They have the tournament of death in September, so I think that if I just go back in September, like 6 months from now, and go to their next event, I think that'd be me very interested. I also know that because I watch a lot of AEW, MJF and Adam Page are having a Texas Death Match in Los Angeles. So I think probably watching this makes me a little like, okay, how am I going to enjoy that match when I saw, maybe 6 or 7 death matches tonight? So I do think it does run to that repetitiveness. And I think like my last thing I'll answer to people is I have 2 more things I got to answer to you guys. The first one is, I think it was worth my money? Absolutely. I'm a fan of deathmatch wrestling. I'm a fan of the more edgy, more violent stuff. This is not WWE with their Muppets or anything like that. This is actually CZW, and it's meant to be for an adult audience and a hardcore fan and people who like death matches. So I felt quite honestly, I got my money's worth. I knew what I was getting into, and I felt like it was way worth $150. I would have paid maybe a few, I probably would have paid like maybe a maximum of $300 really. The other thing that I will say about this is this garbage wrestling? I would say yes and no. I think that the first thing that I would say is yes, yes, in the sense that there was really no story to anything that I saw. They did not have any story, but I will say that I watch AEW, and here's the issue with Combat Zone Wrestling and AEW, is that after the matches, you should have like promos and video packages, and people like hyping up the next thing, or saying, okay, I'm done with you, I'm moving on to something else, or other things like that. There has to be more, story. Not everybody does their shit. You go to the back, or next person does their shit, you go to the back. You have to have people kind of talk about where they're going next, or if they make closure, or they're going to continue something with somebody. Or you have somebody say, hey, you know what? I had a great showing tonight. I'll see you at the Tournament of Death in September, motherfuckers, or something like that, really. So I did feel that what wasn't good about a lot of the matches that I saw was that there was really no story, or where are we going with these characters. I think that would have made the show way stronger, but I would say that AEW is extremely weak in that area, really. So I think that's a general problem with a lot of professional wrestling, that there's no kind of like continuation. Like every wrestler has their story, and every match and everything they do has a chapter book. So I think that just having nothing but hardcore stuff without like a story, it was kind of detrimental. It does have diminishing returns if you do that, but you have to kind of make us care about these people a little bit more by having a story, or talking about where they want to go, really. So I did feel, in that sense, it felt like a little like it felt like it was a little weak in that area. I would say to call it garbage wrestling, or say it's like shock value or stupid or whatever, or people just hurting themselves. I would say like no. I think that when you watch people wrestle, when you hear how people talk, and when you see how people carry themselves, it's like they give a fuck, really. So I think that it's, as I said, that obviously there's many wrestlers there that they're going to end up in AEW or WWE in the future. There's many wrestlers who just want to do this as a career and give you guys the best show possible. And as I said, I think that definitely they just have to build on saying, hey, we're not just here to have these hardcore, off the wall, crazy motherfucking matches. We have to give you a story along with it, or talk about why we're here and everything like that. Really, I think that that's kind of the thing that separates garbage wrestling from real wrestling. But as I said, you watch you watch like something like on AEW where where there's not a lot of good storytelling. And I think like maybe my last thing that I'll say to you guys is where can they improve? I think they need to have more storytelling. I think they need to show video packages to say, hey, these are why these people are fighting. You know, this is the beef that they have with each other. And I think then they're off to the races with that. Like, long as you kind of like contextualize that there's a story and a conflict, long as you say, hey, you know what, a lot of people don't follow us. I mean, well, they may get a few thousand people, but that's kind of bring it to the audience's attention. Why are these people having a match? What's going on with people? And hype that up really, because if you do that, you're going to get into a situation where people understand what's going on. And maybe if it's video package is too hard, then do promos really. But there has to be a contextualization of why is Nico Gray and Jake Gray fighting, why is Angela Metro and Mickey fucking Knuckles fighting, and so on really. Or you talk about the CZW CZW Ultraviolent title. And then you talk about, okay, what does this title mean to these 7 people? You know, there's you set up stories with the titles and everything like that. Then the show's way stronger. Like, learn from AEW, because they don't do that well. But overall, I think this was a great night. The positives weigh the negatives. I'm definitely kind of sleepy, but I'm excited to I'm excited to put stuff together and make a great video for you guys. Sorry, I just dropped one of my bottle caps. But ultimately, too, I'm very happy that I went, and it was a hell of a motherfucking show, and I definitely want to see more CZW.